Right, hello, hi.
Hello.
It's Andrew and Claire here. We are today, because the question we've had time and time again is, should I go small, or should I, and potentially stay safe while I open my coffee shop, or should I go big? Often, all the time, we hear small is safe, big is frightening. And, it might not be that way round. Actually, it could be different. Big could be actually great, and small could be an issue. And it's all about understanding the nuances.
Understanding the pros and cons of both. If you don't know us already, we're Andrew and Claire Bowen. We're authors of the best-selling book, The Daily Grind, How to Open and Run a Coffee Shop That Makes Money.
Community now for the Startup and Coffee Shop members group is up to over 2,000 people now. So it's definitely 2,000 people who have joined our Facebook group. So you might be watching this on Facebook, or you could be watching it on LinkedIn, or you could be live on YouTube as well.
But the fact that there's over 2,000 members is a great indication that so many of you want to start up your own coffee shop.
Now, we're in the middle of the world's worst pandemic we've ever known. I'm sure you're aware of that, like everyone else. And it's been really tough for lots and lots of hospitality businesses. Thousands have closed, and there will be more pain to come, I'm sure. Where as we start, historically, when you start coming out of recession, businesses that have been hanging on by a thread then start to fail. But the one glimmer of hope with everything here is the independent coffee shop has done relatively well. The independent community coffee shop has done relatively well during the lockdown, and it's the big boys really have struggled the mostly, particularly in town centres. Community businesses have done very, very well. So it's it still is a good time to think about opening a coffee shop if you're looking to open an independent coffee shop, or perhaps grow, because there's some great opportunities out there. Okay, so the eternal question is, do we start small, or I'm afraid of opening committing to a big unit, or do we go big and and grow? So that's the question we get asked time and time again.
Yes. So we thought we'd talk about it today, and please put any comments you want and ask us, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Yeah, put in the comments or anything like that, and we'll attempt to answer them as we go. So I suppose the first thing to understand is, what is the definition of small? So by small, we mean a cart, a hole in the wall, perhaps, a very, very small unit.
Yeah, a kiosk or a unit that is less than 20 covers, a pop-up unit. That's the definition that we use for small.
Yeah, so anything less than 20 covers really is really quite hard. There are tons and tons of units out there of that size as well. In terms of availability, you can't go far wrong. There are, when you start looking for a unit, as I'm sure if you're in that position of looking for coffee shops now, or for places to open, then you'll find you'll be there's a glut, in fact, of quite small units at a relatively cheap price as well in terms of their rent. And of course, you can pretty much get a cart to start tomorrow if you wanted to, off eBay. So let's just go through the pros and cons. And as we go through this, there's no real right or wrong for this, but I think the important thing for you thinking about opening is to understand the differences, because there's some real benefits of small, and there's also some real concerns potentially. So you need to go into it.
So really, you weigh up the pros and cons of both, and you work out what's right for you. But so if we go into the what's the pros of having a small unit?
Well, it's obviously lower cost of setup is the first one. You can start less sub 10 grand, even cheaper if you can borrow some of the equipment, or something cheap. It's really, really, really cheap, particularly if you want to just get a coffee machine and put it in your friend's in the front of your friend's garden centre, and they won't charge you anything. You know, it's really cheap.
So it's lower risk. It's perceived to be by a lot of people a lot lower risk because it's a lower startup costs.
Yeah, and of course you can do everything yourself pretty much. If you've got a small unit, you can pretty much do everything yourself. And of course, it's much quicker if you're doing it all yourself. You know, as I said earlier, you can just one click and you can buy a couple of things off eBay and set it all up and get it going. So, you know, you could do it really, really quickly. There's no mess around with leases. There's no mess around with choosing sites, all that sort of stuff. You can pretty much get going straight away.
Very much so. And a lot of people find starting off small a really good way of proof of concept. They have this great idea, and by starting off small and trialing it out, they can see whether their idea actually works, and then go build on from that.
That's a very good point, actually, because it's you know, particularly if you're new to the industry, this might be what you want to do to really understand whether you're going to enjoy it or not, because it is, you know, it is a specific, you know, it's a really enjoyable job running a coffee shop or owning a coffee business.
But it is hard work, and a lot of people have preconceived ideas of what it's going to be. I've always dreamed of having my own coffee business and what have you, but until you actually work in there, which is why we always say, go and work in someone else's coffee shop to see if you like it before you even get this far. Yeah. But starting small and trying the concept and see whether it's right for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a pro.
And of course, you know, on top of that, it's fairly cheap to start up. Again, there's limited legal costs. You can do it in somebody else's business, perhaps, and it might give you a showcase. We've seen this happen a number of times, actually, where somebody has set up a cart or they've set up a pop-up even, and or a community space. They've worked in a community space and they've been identified, they've been spotted by the developer who's opening a unit just up the road, and they're thinking, who can we get to come on board with us with this? Because, you know, the minute you're operating it, you're suddenly the expert. You're the local expert. So it could give you a great opportunity to open up.
And we've seen that many times, that people have grown from that very small.
Yeah, and there's some great examples, actually. I know you know, there are a number of examples of where people have started small and grown. You know, some really big, you know, obviously Starbucks started with one, and Costa started with one, and Black Sheep most recently started with one, 3 guys. So
look how big they all are now.
Yeah. I think the cons of you know, the concerns, the things you need to worry about really when you're opening is, of course, the biggest issue, of course, is your sales are capped by the physical size or your location. Obviously, sales is a direct relationship between how many covers you've got and how many times you can turn those covers and how much you can charge each person to you know, how much each person will spend. So, you know, your sales are capped, which can be a big issue.
Very big issue. And also the operational constraints of being small. You're going to have a smaller unit. You're going to have less people in there. You're going to have less storage areas. You're going to have a smaller kitchen or prep area. Just the ergonomics of the staff and the customers coming in and out is going to be very, very difficult. And we've seen this recently, obviously, with COVID. The fact that there's such a small unit, the social distancing rules and the COVID restrictions. If you're very, very small, people have found this really, really difficult to be able to carry on and make money through the COVID restrictions. Yeah,
and because of your size as well, you're limited with space. Because of your size, limited with space. Sorry, you're limited with menu, what you can actually make. So you know, if you've got a very, very small kitchen, you see this, you know, as you go around looking at small coffee shops, people try and do everything off a tiny, you know, or bain marie or a one grid or one grill or something, and everybody's getting in each other's way. There's a limit to what you can put on your menu, which gives you margin implications. So, you know, if you had a slightly bigger unit, you had a bigger kitchen, you were able to make stuff, then your margins get better. So the more you buy in, obviously, the less your margin is, and the smaller your menu, the more snacky your menu, the less attractive it is potentially to customers.
Yeah, and the less money you'll make, which is, after all, why we all go into this business, is to make a profit. I mean, also the smaller machines, small speed of service. If you've got a very small unit, you'll need a smaller coffee machine, perhaps a 2-head or what have you, if you're in a very, very small kiosk, and you are limited to the speed of your service, how much coffee you can make from that coffee.
Yeah, that's a really important thing. You often see carts at festivals and stuff like that with a big queue, and there's a limit to how much they can take per hour, because they're people that they're jumping over each other. The machine is only small, hasn't got enough boiler capacity, they can't generate enough hot water, all that sort of stuff. We've been there, we got the T-shirt. So those little things just cause you. They cap how much you can actually sell, how much you can actually take, and obviously that caps how much you can make.
Definitely, and also the smaller unit might not have the right power supply.
Yeah,
there's often restrictions because would you need 3-phase? Have you got a domestic supply board, or do you need a generator? If you've got a kiosk, sometimes you need a generator, and that can be really, really noisy.
Well, generator can be noisy, and it also limits you in terms of how much amperage you can get out of it. You can get these really big generators now, but again,
noisy.
They're noisy, but they're also very expensive as well.
And also storage issues of a cart or a kiosk. What do you do with it when you're not using it? Have you got somewhere to store it? Because all that takes up space.
Yeah, and having a small unit actually does limit your ability to grow, because as an owner, when you're starting out, these places can't really afford. You can't afford to pay a manager to come in there and work with you. That's the issue with these places. So we'll talk about it in a second, because it's one of the biggest issues. But being able to afford a manager, being able to take enough money to pay a manager and pay the bills, and allow yourself to, allow you to take enough money out of the business to generate a profit for you and a return, then that's a big issue.
It is a very big issue, and a lot of people who start small find out about this issue. That's an issue that they didn't even think about before they started. Because before you actually start, you've got to think, what's my end goal? Do I want to expand? Do I want a job? Do I want it just to be me, my own little business? Well, then small's good for you, but you will need a day off. You will need a holiday. You can't do everything on your own, otherwise you burn yourself out.
Yeah, I think we'll tackle that at the end. But actually, with all these things, it's really important to understand what your end goal is. If it's a stepping stone to open a bigger site or to get proof of concept, then often a small is really good. If it's, well, this is what I'm going to do, after 6 months of setting up, I'm going to get a manager in to run it, and I'm going to go to the Bahamas. In reality, that's not going to work. You got to understand that. You're always under, unless you're in a very, very high takeaway area, and those takeaway spots are getting less and less because of the availability of good coffee everywhere. The other thing to consider with these pop-ups and units, particularly, are the hidden costs. Things like fuel. So if you have got a generator, then you're gonna have to run that with some sort of fuel. You're gonna have, if you've got a coffee van, then there's a fuel insurance, all that sort of stuff you need to think about as well, to factor in to your budget as well. If you've got a unit, where are you going to put it at night?
Which is a problem that a lot of carts and trucks actually find, is the storage of their equipment and the storage of their stock at night when they're not there. But also bearing in mind, when you have a cart or a truck, you've got to have site fees. And if you go to a festival or anywhere, you usually have to pay a site fee. Yeah,
what a lot of people don't realise is that some of the site fees for these big festivals are in the thousands of pounds, and it's an upfront cost as well. And if it rains, you're stuffed, basically. So there's all those hidden costs that might look really good, but be aware of that. Go in that with your eyes open. And of course, when you're building something like this, when you've got a small unit or a cart or a pop-up, what you're building is not something you can really sell on, because the business ends up being just you.
Without you in that small business, you haven't got anything to sell.
Yeah.
So you if you're thinking the end game is to sell and make money from that, small is not necessarily the right place.
Yeah. Obviously, we mentioned in one of the benefits earlier around going small is that it won't cost you too much in terms of legals, but ultimately you might end up without any legal protection at all, or you might be on an extremely short lease, or you might just be on something called tenants in common, where effectively you haven't got a lease, you just pay the rent, and the guy can get rid of you, or the people can get rid of you at any time. So that lack of legal protection, although it might save you a little bit of money, actually gives you no long-term benefit, and actually reduces the value of your business or your pitch to sell. But the biggest thing, really, I think, in terms of going small as a con, is that you end up as a job.
You end up as a job and not a business. You buy yourself a job, not a business, and you end up doing most things yourself. Now, some people will say, well, that's what I want to do, but it's very, very hard when you haven't got a day off. You wear yourself out, and it doesn't only affect you, it'll affect your family and all your social issues as well that comes with it. Because you got to think of sickness, you've got to think of wanting to go on holidays, and you've also got to bear in mind you need time to do all the admin to the business as well.
Yeah, this is a biggie, actually. So we're not saying don't go small, all right? But what we are saying is that if you do go small, the business is you, typically, and you end up doing everything else. I know when you're starting off in a coffee shop, when you're starting off in a small cafe, it is typically you will do everything. You'll try and do the admin and all that sort of stuff. But if it is just you, it does wear you out. If you've got to work 7 days a week or to make the numbers work, if you often small places will open 5 days a week. They'll shut on a Monday or a Tuesday. But in terms of being able to, generate long-term customer loyalty, having a coffee shop or a cafe cart that doesn't operate all the time, that customer's always going to be thinking, well, shall I bother walking there? Shall I bother going there? Because it's not necessarily, do I know whether it's going to be open or not?
Because exactly, your guests will want to know for sure, are you going to be there or are you not going to be there? Are you going to shut up early because it's raining and there's nobody here, so I'm going to close early? Your customers will need to know when you're going to be there. Otherwise, you're going to have very disappointing customers when they come and you shut up shop for the day.
So if we move on to the big, and we'll start with the cons of the big first, because it's not all crows. Okay, so
when we say big, for the definition, let's say 80
covers with a decent size kitchen. So a unit that is at least 1,500 square foot, 150 square meters, and ideally a bit bigger in reality. So you've got a bit of space to play around with. It just feels more of a social space. So
exactly.
Let's talk
about the cons then.
So obviously, straight away, you've got the cost of setup. Without one of the biggest attractions of going small is that low budget. You don't need much. The bigger you go, the more it costs. You don't need a rocket. Don't be a rocket scientist to realize that.
But if you think of the fit out costs, you've got the floor, you've got the ceiling, you've got the air con, you've got the power, the lighting, the extract. There's so much more that often when you go big, you've got to factor in how much money it is to the cost of setup.
Yeah. So just don't underestimate those sort of things. They are. They can run away with each other, and our recommendation for a lot of people actually is to go and take over. If you can take over an existing site, that'll save you a load of money, particularly if you've got some equipment left in there as well. In terms of competition as well, of course, when you start looking for bigger sites, you're potentially in competition then for those sites with other operators.
Because it's surprising when there's a bigger site, there's usually restaurants and bars already in the area in competition with you, isn't there? Yeah,
absolutely. And the big boys, the Costas, the Starbucks, the casual dining restaurants, they have got their spreadsheet. They've got their list of what things they need to tick the box on to say, well, is this a suitable size? The unit, is it the right demographic? And the bigger units will straight away tick a lot more boxes on their thing. They won't even consider going for a small unit because they can't operate their style of business in it. But the minute you get 1,500 to 2,000 square foot and perhaps 2,500 square foot, You know, the likes of Pizza Express, the likes of Byron, all those new guys that are now sort of on the up. I'm sorry I said Pizza Express and Byron because those are the ones that are not on the way up. But, you know, if you look at the ones that are taking this opportunity, Rosa's Thai is a good example. They're now looking for this opportunity. They've got some cash. They're looking to expand now, and it will tick those boxes. So, you know, the cons of it will be more expensive, and you'll be in more competition. And of course,
the legals as well.
Yeah, of course, the legals.
I mean, the legals you have to pay, the bill you have to pay for all your legal advice and everything else will be more. But we can't stress enough that you need to spend money on your legals. Otherwise, it'll come to haunt you if you don't. So your legals will take longer to sort out with the right legal team, and they will cost more. Yeah,
and getting these things right, you know, it becomes a bit of a minefield as well when you're dealing with bigger landlords, particularly if you're starting off. It can be quite daunting if you're starting off for the first time as well, which is why you need yourself to get yourself a proper commercial solicitor who's used to dealing with commercial property leases day in, day out. It's not like renting a flat.
It's definitely not like renting a flat, but also it takes a long time to sort out the leases, longer than you would think. But also tax implications, stamp duty or land tax.
Yeah,
you can become liable depending on how.
Yeah, if you've got an expensive lease, you get on the threshold of stamp duty, and a lot of people don't even consider that when they're looking at their business model, and it can be 20, 30K on top. And then big sites, the landlords are looking for covenants, a strong covenant, and if your only asset is your house and you've got a large mortgage on it, then it might not be what the landlord's looking for. They're looking for comfort that you can run it. So if it's a first time operation for you, then you're trying to get into the market to get a big unit. It's harder as an independent startup, but it's not impossible. We've worked, we're actually working now with 2 clients who are getting opportunities from the big landlords because they're independent and because they're going to offer something different. Because the landlords now realize, I think, that just because they're a big business with a supposedly big covenant, in reality, they've also got the money. These guys have also got the money to do CVAs and leave the landlords, running around for cash.
Yeah.
So
landlords are looking at things differently. But also a con to a big unit is the team, because we've said if you've got a small unit, you do everything yourself, because you can't afford to hire a manager. But if you've got a bigger unit, you will need a good team around you, because you definitely can't do everything. So you need to hire the right team. So you've got the recruitment issues, the training issues, and you can't grow without a good team.
No, you can't grow without a good team. So we put that as a con, but actually it's a real benefit in truth. But
so turn it around to be a benefit.
But if you're the sort of person that likes working on their own and doesn't want all the hassle of employing a team, then perhaps small is good for you. At least you know that if there's nobody going to be sick because you're the one that's going to be sick. If you don't employ anyone, then you have to worry about people phoning in sick because it's just you.
You just got to worry that you don't get sick.
Yeah, you just have to worry that you don't get sick. So let's talk about the pros now of going bigger. So of course, the benefit of going bigger, a slightly bigger unit, and we talked about 80 covers plus. It doesn't have to be quite that big, but at least 80 is for us is where it becomes big. Anything between 20 and anything between 40 and 60 is better than the 20-seater. But actually, 80. If we talk about 80, you're going to get much higher sales. You're going to be more profitable. You'll have the ability to have time off because you've got that team to run it. So your job turns into something different. So when you're starting off small, you are the technician, you are on the tools, you are that guy that is making the coffee. When you've got a bigger operation that runs more days, then it's suddenly you've got a proper business, and
it becomes that you're working on your business rather than in your business. It's a completely different feeling, and you have the ability to have time off. You can book a holiday and go away for a week knowing that your shop is still going and running really well. So if you employ a good team, they will advertise your business for you, so you're not in there at the cutting edge all the time. You can be in there at the cutting edge all full time, but you have a team of people around you. You can employ a team of people around you to make it work for you and make it more profitable.
Yeah. The other advantages of being big, of course, you've got a much bigger opportunity for a bigger food menu. It makes your place a lot more attractive to customers. People will come from further afield. You will have a wider radius of attraction. If you've got a bigger food, if you've got more space, you potentially have a separate kitchen with a better equipped kitchen, and you're able to provide, and get your average spend higher, which is really critical.
That's really important, because when you've got the space and the team around you to make that offering of a really good food menu, your margins are going to increase and you're going to make more profit. So it's a win-win.
And because it's a slightly bigger space, you can use it for different things. So you can zone it for work from office, or you can zone it for quiet areas, or you could zone it for deliveries, for pickups and all that sort of stuff. So the bigger the space,
the more you got to play with, because you will have found your ideal customer, your DNA, the customer that you want to appeal to. You can lay out the zones in your place to suit them. So whether there is an area for office workers with PowerPoints, and there's another with soft seating, the bigger the unit, you've got the chance to have different areas for people to enjoy.
Yeah. If you've got that as well, you're able to extend the day part usage. So traditionally, coffee shops are strong in the morning, okay at lunchtime, and then die off later on in the afternoon. You've seen the likes of Grind out there. You've seen the likes of Over and Under is a great example of turning a coffee shop into a wine bar in the evening, particularly if you're in the right area. So extending that day part usage will allow you to sweat the asset and make more money. And you are building an asset here. The whole point of a bigger unit is that you can build an asset which you can either
you can either sell, or you can use that asset to raise more capital to buy another unit. So therefore you increase your portfolio. And remember that we say big 80 plus covers. With COVID and social distancing, I'll put my teeth back in. You've got enough space so people can come in and they can feel safe.
Yeah, and COVID has changed the whole demographic, the whole way we operate our businesses now. And even with the vaccine, even with everything that's going on in terms of treatment, I think we all know in our heart of hearts that things are not going to be the same. And in terms of people ain't going to be as comfortable squeezing cheek and jowl in small spaces. And I think if you've got more space, it's going to be a real benefit. And particularly if you've got outdoor space as well. One of the other things we haven't mentioned actually is if you have a larger unit, chances are you'll have a bigger frontage. If you've got a bigger frontage, and typically you'll have a lot more space, which is
great for the summer and great for the COVID restrictions. And it's really valuable. So basically, go into this with your eyes open. It's your business, and you choose what size unit you want. But you need to go with your eyes open and and know what's best for you, and know what your outcome is before you even go in. The number of people we speak to who start a business and they don't know what they want it to be in 15 years' time. Have your end game before you start. Know if you want to grow it, if you want to retire, if you want to sell it or hand it on to your children, or even just close the door and hand the keys back. You've got to know your end game before you actually start.
Yeah, that is so important to understand that, and understanding, about you, so we've outlined the positives and the negatives of big and small this afternoon, but ultimately you need to do something that you feel right and happy to do. If you're happy to be on the tours, there's nothing wrong being a one-man band and making money and being your own boss, but you will find it hard to grow. Unless you get an investor in, or your takeaway sales are suddenly massive. But ultimately, the fundamental issue is there that you are limited, you're capped there in terms of being able to take. So, and Robert's asked in the questions on LinkedIn, actually, as we've said, is go small or run 2 or 3 similar sized units in close proximity so you can manage these 3 together is worth considering. Well, if you effectively you're doing the same thing. So if you're going to be the manager running 2 or 3 sites with staff, but you're unable to employ an autonomous manager, take responsibility of that on a day-to-day basis, you're still effectively operating one site. Yeah. So, effectively, if you didn't turn up tomorrow, then it wouldn't happen really, because they're going to need you. Ultimately, there will be a little bit of autonomy in the sites, but without having a manager in each site, without having that, you'll find it really hard to grow. And ultimately, if you've got 3 sites or 10 sites, you'll want to have enough turnover or profit on that to be able to get yourself an area manager. And if you have 2 or 3 big sites, and probably 5 sites is where you begin to look at having some sort of area control. Probably 10 to 15 is where you start employing an area manager in terms of business growth trajectory. But ultimately, it's about understanding what you want to do. If you've got some people we know have got one town and they got 5 or 6 sites in it, and they just walk around. Basically, they're all walkable. They're all quite small. They're easy to manage. They don't work. They're not sort of. They close 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's quite a nice job they got. They wander around. They go to the cash carry, all that sort of stuff. But the business basically relies on them. So it's a bit about understanding what you want at the very beginning, which is what we said at the very beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
So we hope you've enjoyed that. It is the eternal question we get asked. And we have stood in your shoes. So if you're thinking about opening a coffee shop or cafe at the moment, we have stood in your shoes. We're talking from our own personal experience here of starting up new, taking over existing, developing concepts. And since we've started consulting or coaching, we've now worked with hundreds of startups and established coffee shops all over the world. So if you are interested in finding out how we can help you or work with you, there's a few things you can do. You can find us. So we've got this course called startupcoffeeshop.com, which is an online course. It is developed from our course we ran in London before lockdown, the Coffee Shop Bootcamp. So there's all the best elements of that, but it's in video form for you to watch 24/7. Obviously, we're all hoping that you bought our book by now. If you haven't, it's the Daily Grind. You get that on Amazon. They got plenty of them.
I'm sure you've seen it already.
It's definitely worth buying. And if you're an established coffee shop and you really want to, if you're perhaps just struggling to earn the profit you want, or even struggling to sleep at night, then we are here for you. We can help you. We can work with you. And we got a double guarantee. So our double guarantee is that you get your money back if you don't like what we say, okay? And we doubly guarantee that the cost of you employing us to work with you will be more than covered by the benefit of working with us. So the money we save you, the money we make you, we guarantee will make you more than it costs to take us on. So get in touch with us. Go to cafesuccesshub.com mentor if you're an established business and looking for a mentor, looking for a coach, or if you are in startup phase, then please go to startupcoffeeshop.com now and buy the course. The course is literally £99 plus the VAT, so it is.
Yeah, it's an absolute bargain. And also with that course, we've got a private Facebook coaching group that you can ask us anything and we will answer. Yeah. We will answer every question that you've got.
Yeah, we got a really good community there. So obviously, on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, we can't answer every single question people ask. But in our private group, when you become a member of our group, when you become one of our coaching clients or member of our group, then obviously we're here to answer every single question. So we hope you've enjoyed the afternoon. I hope it's not too cold where you are. It's been pretty chilly.
It's been very cold here, but the sun is shining.
The sun is shining. And we will see you next time.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.